what's up? This is Real Talk Darbs and I have very exciting news for you. Dinari Cash and Beam & Go has decided to tie up to bring groceries to your loved ones in the Philippines. By using the application Dinari Cash, you can actually deliver yung mga groceries na gusto nating ipadala door to door sa Pilipinas. In light of the community quarantine and growing COVID-19 cases in the Philippines, we are tying up with Beam & Go para sa mga kababayan nating OFW na nandito sa UAE to buy groceries. So what are you waiting for? Download Dinari Cash app now and enjoy a lot of services, not just sending money, but also sending grocery to your families at home.
Yes, welcome to another Finance Friday with me, Kuya J, aka the Purpose-Driven Advisor. So, we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And this episode will also be available on my Para and Purpose podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Of course, huge thanks to our regular viewers out there, and big shout out to Dinari Cash, John Santillan, and the entire gang. Thank you so much for supporting my advocacy on financial literacy. So today, medyo full English si Kuya Jay kasi nga ang guest ko is a Brit. He is a UK, he's from the UK. By the way, if you are new to my channel pala, please like, share, and subscribe sa Facebook, YouTube, and connect with me on LinkedIn. So, as I was saying, no, ang guest ko today would be a Brit national, and he's been a good friend. We've been talking about different stuff about finances, and I've learned so much from him as well. And just a quick trivia, by the way. Do you know that in 2015, there was a survey done globally about the financial literacy ranking of many countries around the globe? And the Philippines was ranked 25th. And the person that I'm going to speak to today is living in a country where financial literacy is ranked 65th. So it's a huge gap, and that's why I want to speak to him to learn more about their culture and see if there's anything that we can learn so that we can improve how we manage our finances. So just a quick introduction of our guest. He is a man on a mission to improve education and transparency in financial services. Currently, the co-founder of Help with Debt, with big transformations occurring in the next coming months. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Nathan Mcfarlane. How are you, bro?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good, man. You look so busy these days, man. We spoke like a month ago. Was it?
Yeah. There's a lot going on, that's for certain. Yeah. It seems my life is that my job's becoming a lot more, a lot of different things now in comparison to what it was back in the day, shall we say. So it's very varied and very busy, but lots of positive things occurring. So yeah, baby steps towards the greater goal, but we're getting there.
I like the mission that you're into, and we've spoken a lot about our different perspectives, about our advocacies on promoting financial literacy. Me from the Filipinos here, and you for many expats living here in the UAE. So before we continue, before we start, and some people may not know you yet, can you tell us more about yourself, brother?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name's Nathan, and so essentially I have been in the UAE for 7 years. Prior to that, I was living in the UK, obviously, from where I'm from. I came to the UK to be a financial advisor, or realistically, it's financial sales. It's, when someone comes here and they say that they're a financial advisor, they're not really a financial advisor, they're an insurance salesman. And I didn't really like that job, to be honest. I didn't feel that the service that was being provided was good enough. So I went on a mission to try and improve financial services here in the UAE. Firstly, I was working with British and Western expatriates, but then I saw how, exactly what you were saying there, only 25% of Filipinos have any form of understanding of financial literacy. So I saw that Filipinos needed to be aided in understanding financial literacy a little bit better than the demographic that I was working with, because naturally, if you're less financially literate, people can take advantage of you more. So, whether that was being sold condos with not understanding what they're being sold, or being sold insurance policies and not understanding it, or being sold investment policies and not understanding it. And then it became apparent that these policies were being sold whilst the majority of people were having extremely tough times with debt. So we set up a debt company to be able to aid individuals solve their debt problems. And that kind of turned into what was a Filipino brand, Filpera, into what is now called Help with Debt. And that is now going to evolve into something much, much larger in the next 6 months, which I'm not going to give the game away just quite yet. But yeah, that's going to be something much larger, where we're going to be able to really have an impact on financial services for what I perceive to be the better. Really easy example is, you've got Denari Cash there as your sponsor, right?
Yep.
Denari Cash is taking advantage of technology to become a more economical provider for money transfer, right? So, but if people don't understand how much they're being charged in the first place, like even though they're going to an exchange house, or they're being, they're transferring money through the bank, they don't understand that there's far more economical ways that you can be saving money for doing the same thing, and then sometimes doing the same thing and getting your money sent quicker. You're losing out. So we're trying to build a technology which is going to highlight that, help people that need it most, realistically, that are getting taken advantage of most. And we're now in this era of financial technology where there's going to be tens of thousands of different applications for finance. But if people don't understand, why they should be using them, there's an opportunity there for us to be able to help people. And that starts with people that need it most, and that's the people that are in debt right now.
Exactly. And like what you said a while ago, many people have invested or bought insurance policies or other financial products without actually without actually first tackling their debt problems. And it becomes a huge problem along the way when they could no longer afford to pay the premiums, because of course they were still in. And not many people are really aware of what they should do first. Now, more about that probably later this afternoon. But what we really want to learn is how you guys lead your life in the UK. First off, my first question would be, how was money discussed in your household? Was it a common thing? Because we know that education begins at home. And are many Brits parents really into teaching financial literacy, or is money openly discussed in your household?
Well, it's funny you say that. I don't actually think that financial literacy is really taught in the UK either. I think it's just a more developed economy, and because it's a more developed economy, people understand finance a little bit better. It's a more mature market in regards to financial services, and where there's a more mature market, and and there's education, people understand financial services a little bit better, and financial literacy a little bit better. And that exactly what you said there, 65% of Brits, in comparison to 25% of Filipinos, are supposedly financially literate. So, I think that it's not really that it's completely discussed. I think that it's just there apparent, that we're taught basically from as soon as we're 16 years old, if not before, go and get a job. That's the first thing. Go and get a job, stand on your own 2 feet with your own money. That's the main thing. But I think the big difference between the UK and the Philippines is because the majority of people tend to have some money to fall back on. Sometimes I think we've got a more stable situation to start ourselves in. For example, like for me, I wouldn't even be in the UAE if it wasn't for my mum. She lent me money to come here. She bailed me out when I made bad mistakes with finance when I was younger. So we talk about it, but I wouldn't say it's, it's at the forefront of everything. It's not, it's not like, oh, where's the next, are you being able to pay for your rent or your milk and bread this month? I think it's a bit different from that. I think that there's a far more financially stable economy in the UK as a whole, in comparison to the Philippines, based on, the experiences that I had, obviously being in the UK and obviously traveling to the Philippines and working there in the Philippines as well. So, yeah, I think that it's slightly different. I think the main factor is because the economy is more mature in comparison. The Philippines is still a developing economy, where obviously the UK is a developed economy and one of the most developed in the world.
I see. Well, so I always thought that it is because you guys are openly discussing this in your household. Now, good thing that you mentioned about.
I think you've got a point there. I think that it's less taboo to talk about money in the UK in comparison to it is in the Philippines, right? We are far more. I think we're better communicators when it comes to money in comparison to Filipinos. From my experience, we're not afraid to turn around and ask or explain that we're in trouble or not worry about what anyone else thinks. Whereas I think in Filipino culture, a little bit more, it's more like you're worried about what your family are going to think. And, there's a pressure on you a little bit more to do things for them, when I know for a fact the amount of OFWs that are sending money home right now and their families are living far, far better lives than those OFWs are, right? Because we know that, right? We know it. So I think it's partially that. That sometimes there's that cultural pressure on Filipinos to be able to, just your thing is to send money home. You must send money home. That's part of your culture, even if you're struggling. But then when you realistically should turn around and say, "Oh, I know," and this isn't just from me meeting one or two people. This is from me meeting thousands of Filipinos now, and it's 90%, and that's no over exaggeration. 90% of the time, they are sending too much money back to their families whilst leaving themselves in worse positions than what their family would be in. It's crazy. That wouldn't happen with Brits. That was that wouldn't happen with Brits.
So your families, or let's say your parents, do not pressure you in sending money back home because you guys.
I've never sent money back home I've never sent money back home in my entire life, ever.
Wow! So it was never an issue with them. It was never an issue with them. They would never feel bad about it or what. They wouldn't.
And it doesn't matter whether you are, my family, my mum is, she's got a stable income, so she's built up her future already. But even if families are back in the UK and they don't earn substantial money, everyone has got a certain amount of money to sustain themselves based on the welfare state. So everyone gets a certain, even if someone isn't working, they're still getting the equivalent of about 700 dirhams. So pesos, 10,000 pesos. Is that right? 700 dirhams? 10,000 pesos per week.
So this is a combination of everything, not just I think not just about the mindset, but also the government and the kind of support that the government is giving to the citizens. Now, talking about the government support and probably their initiative in promoting financial literacy in your country. Is it very common that it is discussed in your school system or in the education system? Is it part of the curriculum as you grew up?
Not to the level like me and you talk about, where we really delve into everything. It's not taught to that level. Actually, it's taught very, very moderately, I would say. It's not a subject or anything like that. I think it's just our eyes are open to it a little bit more than most. But in regards to understanding financial security, the structure that you're going to need to be in, none of that, when I was at school at least, was discussed. So there is still this massive gap where
Okay.
The very, very simple things should be discussed, but they're not, which is backwards thinking. But obviously the government want it that way, so otherwise they
Yeah,
already would have done it.
and even in the Philippines, we're just trying to start this financial literacy movement to be added in our school curriculum, which I think is a great initiative, by the way. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I also think that teachers and educators should also be aware of the basic financial instruments, pensions, retirement, and the saving schemes that they can also apply for themselves. So I think that
Yeah.
is still a challenge that both of our countries can actually focus on in terms of financial literacy. Now, what about your spending habits? I'm really curious. Where do Brits spend the most? Is it on gadgets, travel, food, health, or whatever?
Okay. Culturally,
Culturally, yeah.
culturally, we spend money on eating and drinking.
Okay.
Would be the straight out. Culturally, if you look at someone in their 20s or even 30s, it really does conform to a society where you work your 9 to 5, and it gets to the
Mhm.
weekend, and particularly if you're a single person, you're going to go out and drink a lot, most likely, eat out, drink out. But yes, you might have some gadgets at home, perhaps. I think technology is slowly changing that. But I think, yeah,
Mhm.
the majority of people is that they spend their money on social activities, which is largely driven around, it's definitely an alcohol-driven culture for sure. That's slowly changing, but that's the reality. That I think when I was in my 20s, when I was in the UK, from the age of 18 to the age of, let's say, 27, 28, I would go out twice a week and spend my
Mhm.
majority of my social time on eating and drinking. I wouldn't go out and buy gadgets. I wouldn't go out and buy TV or anything like that. It was just a cultural, social society, which I think adds to why we are such good communicators, because our society is driven by social interaction. So yeah, whereas I think in comparison is it's much about gadgets and things that you have
Yeah,
in your hand in the Philippines.
but yeah, I think in our culture, we also love. In my younger 20s, I also love drinking and eating out with friends. I think it's really part of your 20s. But
Yeah,
do you also, so you don't spend so much money on gadgets? Unlike, you don't buy the latest gadget. You just make sure that you spend on relationships. I think more on social gatherings. Is it?
yeah. I think if it's again, this is also gender specific. I think females
Mm,
tend to spend more money on clothes and things like that, where guys spend more money on
on
partying
beer,
and dating. Yeah,
on booze.
I think that's from my personal experience.
Mhm.
I've never really bought any gadgets. I probably have a phone for 3 years, and I've had a laptop for 7 years, and that's it. Don't have a TV. I don't know. Maybe I'm slightly different, but I think that it's less gadget driven. Yeah,
Less gadget driven, more on social gatherings. I
social.
see.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Social activities. Very nice. Now, we have a question here from Miss Mary Chris Asuncion. He said, "At what age do Brits start investing? Where do you usually invest?" Wow.
Okay, Merry Chris. Well, um, firstly, if we're in the UK, you've got, in a way, you're already investing from the word go the moment you start working. So when you're giving what's called national insurance contributions, that's actually going towards you having a pension at the age of 67, I think it is in the UK now. And that's so we know that later in life there's always going to be a certain amount of money there. Also, when you're employed in the UK, pretty much every company has a pension scheme. So a proportion of your salary will go into a pension scheme, which can be then used for later in life as well. So you're building up money later in life. In regards to actual investing outside of what's right, just put in front of you. I suppose you look at what you're talking about there. I think it's common for the majority of Brits in their 20s or early 30s to buy a property, but quite often that's not for an investment purpose, that's to live in. But that depends really where you are in the UK, because property prices are far higher than what they are in the Philippines, and it's the barriers to entry are also far higher, because you need a larger amount of capital and down payments to purchase properties. In regards to investing in financial assets, I think again you're looking as an average, for the majority of people, late 20s to somewhere in their 30s. Some people even I've come across not even at all into their late 30s or 40s. You know, it's very varied, but as a whole, that would, you know, the main thing is the society's built on having a strong pension system, so that you know, the society knows that they're going to have a certain amount of money later in life, and then it's
So
very
the
much
pension
dependent past them.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you know what? The Philippines is just starting to promote the pension scheme by the government, you know, the PERA, the Peso Equity Retirement Account. And I personally believe that this has to be mandatory, because I think
It
in
has
your
to be.
country, it is mandatory, right? The retirement is mandatory. The moment you start to work, you start to put aside money for your retirement as a pension scheme. That has been in
So
the
in
UK
your
for how many for since the beginning of time?
decades at least, ever since, you know, decades. So it's your national national insurance contributions. It's like when you get taxed every month from your salary, a proportion of it will go to national insurance contributions, which will go into you being able to have obviously healthcare and pension later in life. The big thing here is with pensions is, and why it's becoming more. I mean, there's a lot of talk about it in the UK because there's a good healthcare system, and the healthcare technologies are getting better and better. People are living longer, and that's the same in the Philippines, right? So as people live longer, that means how they're going to support themselves later in life if you're living for longer period of time. So I think again, this also with the fact you've got these pension schemes in place in the UK, that goes back to saying, why don't we send money? Well, because everyone in the UK, no matter what age they are, they don't need to be supported 9 times out of 10, because they've already got a certain amount of money which will sustain them to do whatever they need to do. So that's because the structure's been put in place. But if you're putting the pension scheme, mandatory pension scheme in place, well, that still doesn't work. If you're doing it now, you're doing it people that are 25 years now. Well, it doesn't even come into play for another 40 years. So you've still got 40 years worth of problems.
Wow.
And that's the difference. And that's the difference between a developed and a developing economy, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know?
true.
So we're just by having that in place. We've had it in place for decades, but just by having it in place right now, and we've had it in place for decades, and you guys are just putting it in place now. Well, if you're 25 years old now, 65, so you're already at least 40 years behind, at least. In that specific, and that just that one thing is what changes cultures in itself. Because well, if I know for a fact, if my mum didn't have a pension or anything, of course I was going to send her money. I'm not going to let my mum starve or struggle, right? Of course I'm going to, but I don't need to. So then, if I don't need to, why would you? You know,
Exactly. So that it just goes to show that there's a lot of there's still a long road for us to there's a lot of work that needs to be done for us to improve our financial status, or the support of the government to us, especially if I think I also agree that it has to be mandatory, the pension scheme. Since it has worked for you, then I think it might also work for us. Now, I just want to go back to some of the spending habits, because I have observed, me being an expat here in Dubai for the last 5 years, I have observed that many Brits are, when I attend a seminar here, many of the people that attend that seminars are mainly Brits. So are you also into personal growth or into personal development? Do you always, or do many Brits invest in their own personal growth?
Yeah,
Like,
I think I think there's enough education out there now to know that growing yourself is important. Is everyone into personal growth? No,
yeah,
definitely not. I honestly think it's the people that open their eyes to wanting to change, to improve, isn't it? So is it about Brits or culture, or is it about the person themselves? I think that if people are critical thinking enough to think, actually to become better, to live a better life, to live a more stable life, or to potentially, for me, it's about changing things in the world and improving the world. It's not about money for me. But whatever it is, you have to be critical thinking enough in yourself and not necessarily think about what others want to do or think is right. I think personal growth comes from you and yourself and your decisions. So I don't know if that's a nationality thing or anything.
yeah, I see. Yeah, but probably it's because of the people living in Dubai. It's a very diverse place where there are different nationalities,
Yeah,
and how I got into personal development as well. That's how I got into it, because I met a lot of different nationalities. They influenced me to focus on my growth, and
yeah.
but I think this is what I believe in. I mean, most Brits are investing on their health as well. You exercise a lot. You eat more green food versus other nationalities, or is it really part of your culture?
That's technology. Technology has made it more open in society to look a certain way.
Uh-huh.
I think if you look at the British culture from, let's say, my dad's era 40 years ago, it was about drinking and smoking and
Okay.
eating bad food. I think that's society today. The change in society and the more there's a there's a larger understanding about health and being health conscious, and I think that's driven by the media and the technology that we have access to, wanting to look a certain way.
Mhm.
The Instagram, for example, is, I think, is the big one there, right? Everyone wants to look someone on Instagram, right? They're more concerned about the way they look. Is that to do with health, or is that to do with vanity? That's a big question there, right? Are people more health conscious, or are people just more vain?
Or is it more related about wealth as well? Because the healthier we are, we know for a fact that health is wealth. Or is it correlated between why you live a healthier manner?
I think that, for some people, for sure, it is. It's more about, for some people consciously. I say for me, right? I'm now
Yeah.
35 years old next month. Oh.
Mhm.
When I was 25, I would always talk about, I want to be healthy, but it was for vanity,
I
right?
see.
It wasn't for health, it was for vanity. Whereas now at 35, it's not about vanity whatsoever. It is about health, right? It's about,
Mhm.
I want to live as long as I want to live. So I think, it depends your age and, what you're into. I think, some people are more driven by the way that they look, and that obviously links to health, and then perhaps links with wealth. But I think as you get older, it becomes more about the combination of health and wealth. The balance of health and wealth will give you
Mhm.
the best level of living for as long as possible, right?
True, true, true. Yeah, because we can live longer, but we also have to make sure that we can sustain our retirement years, and being healthy can definitely help us along the way. Now,
Yeah.
let's go on for our first break, because it's already 30 minutes. That was fast. That was fast. We were really engaged in this conversation, brother. So let's go on for our first break. Again, this episode is always brought to us by Denari Cash.
Sending money back home is expensive, slow, and time-consuming. Not anymore. Introducing Denari Cash. Denari Cash solves this in a simple way. Denari Cash don't send money across border. Yes, you heard it right. So, you want to know how do we send money internationally without sending across the border? Simple. You make a local payment to Denari Cash, and Denari Cash makes a local payment to your recipient. That's right, it's local in then local out. From any account to any cash pickup and major bank account. That's the reason why Denari Cash makes money transfers so much cheaper and faster. Available on any mobile, tablet, and computer. Denari Cash is trusted and loved by tens of thousands of people just like you. So what are you waiting for? Sign up now and start saving now with Denari Cash.
And we're back. I'm still with Nathan Mcfarlane, the CEO. The co-founder of Help with Debt. I'm gonna get used to this, bro. And our topic for today is understanding financial cultures. I think there's one question in our comment section saying that, what is the bottom line of all this, brother? We're trying to understand different cultures, and because we can learn from many nationalities or different nationalities who are already where we want to go to. And we all know that the Philippines has a long way to go, but it definitely doesn't mean that we won't get there. It's probably a slow progress, but progress is progress. And that's why I am trying to put up all of this kind of content just to make sure that we raise awareness in our community that something has to change in terms of our ways of managing our finances. Now, Mr. Nathan Mcfarlane, okay, I'm going to ask you my next question to you is this. How do you guys address financial planning? Do you always work with financial experts or financial advisors in the UK? Is it something like having a family doctor? Because in the Philippines, many Filipinos have a family doctor, but not many of us have a financial planner. So what about in the UK?
Okay, so the financial planning in the UK is a bit more developed than what it is in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, it's a relatively new concept, and still, however people like to think they're financial planners, they're not. They're insurance brokers, they're insurance agents, or they're condo salesmen. There's no such thing as an independent financial planner in the Philippines. Doesn't exist. Not from what I've come across yet. They're either tied to an insurance agent selling insurance products, or they're tied to a property developer, or so on and so forth. Obviously, it's something that you've seen here is where you start to look at how the development of a market means you can become a more correct financial planner, not a financial salesman. That's the first thing. So because it's more developed in the UK, it is common for people that do have access to a certain amount of cash to have a financial planner. Now, as a whole, though, I would say the majority of people, I would say 9 out of 10 people, do not have a financial planner. And it's something that perhaps people take on board later in life when they have larger amounts of money. But for people our age, in their 20s and 30s, 9 out of 10 people do not have one.
I see. Well, it's a good thing that you raised the concern about the insurance sales agents in the Philippines and even in the UAE, because many of them, and I'm actually part of that industry, brother. So many of those people working in that industry are mainly asked to sell products, but very few of them are certified in financial planning. But in the Philippines, by the way, there's already this group, and I've already had this certification. It's the Registered Financial Planner. It's the RFP program that we have, and what we aim is for us to provide fiduciary services to many clients, meaning we want it to be client-centered and no selling of insurance products. We can only make some recommendations, but we're not tied up with many insurance companies. So I think in the UK, that's how it is, right? Although there are some companies that are also selling insurance products, but there are also some independent financial advisors out there. But
Okay, so so it's a really good way to explain this. So there's regulatory bodies in the UK. So the closest thing you have to a regulatory body is like the course that you do, like for RFP and Registered Financial Planner, which, with no disrespect, is nowhere near anywhere near the qualifications to get a simple qualification in financial planning in the UK. You know, it's not even entry level. So that's just the fact that it's just a mature. There's a more maturing market to come. To give you a real understanding, if you work in a bank in the Philippines, can you call yourself a financial planner or financial advisor? Yes, you can. You can't in the UK because you're selling a product. If you're selling a product in the UK in a financial institution, whether that's in a bank or as an insurance advisor, you cannot be called a financial advisor because you're not a financial advisor, you're a product salesman. So because it's false advertising, isn't it? If you're going into bank, you're going into, let's say, for example, BDO in the Philippines, and you're gonna take a BDO life product. That's not financial planning. That's a BDO life salesman, right? That's a reality. That's just one example that occurs through a number of different things. So you can't call yourself a financial planner. You're not a financial planner. Or a financial advisor. You're a sales manager or a sales advisor. That's I think I think they you use these words to be able that they are sales tactics because you're a financial planner rather than a sales advisor. Which one to you sounds like it's more trustworthy, right? That's going to do right for you, financial planner, right? But and it's just, again, it all goes down to the evolution of a developed market and a developed industry, and that's just all it is. So that doesn't say that people don't still take advantage of it. But with what we're talking about earlier and using Denari Cash as the example, the financial markets are going to evolve very, very quickly. And what this is going to do as well is that with technology and financial technology, with technology companies, you can scale your business far, far quicker than what you would typically with normal what we would consider old style products, insurance, investment products. So what's going to happen is economies in financial services due to fintech are going to evolve far, far faster than what they have over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Now, that can be used for a number of different things for good. But what you'll also find is a lot of people will take advantage of that. And I think you've even seen that recently in the Philippines with the financial scams that have come to pass. So, so I think there's going to be a lot of change, and there's going to be a lot of change which can be done if companies like my company, what we're doing, and companies like Denari, where technology is taking over, and it's taking over, which is it's far more transparent. The thing now is, if people are educated, and you've got trusted people in the community like yourself providing the right education on social media. Previously, if you wanted to get 10 years ago, let's say, if you wanted to get out there and let people know of your knowledge, how did you do it unless you were a multinational company or a multi-million-dollar company? If you're an insurance company in the Philippines, you've got the money to market yourself, right? And they're just selling a product which is very, very intricately created in favor of the financial institution, not the client. Not the client. Then they will promote that. But if you actually have got you're looking at developing a market, in this case, financial services, financial planning, because you want to do right by people, social media now gives you that platform to say, well, hang on a minute, you need to look at this, because you can use your knowledge to educate people. Suddenly, these big multinational companies that were so, you're basically relying on the naivety and their power through money to be able to promote their products, are no longer as powerful, because someone like yourself that's got that understanding and education can go online in front of 10,000 people and say, well, hang on a minute, look at this. You need to understand this. Now, that in turn is going to improve financial literacy. Now, you double down along with the ability if you're educated enough to promote that on social media to a large amount of people, you double down with financial technology as well. which is improving and making financial services more transparent and economical, you've got a big potential change on the horizon where a lot of people can start to understand financial services a lot better and potentially reward themselves for it, which is going to have a humongous knock-on effect to all sorts of different societies and people from the Philippines. It's just one example that how they can have a big impact through actually people like yourself. Because if you get out there and you take the time to gain that knowledge and you gain that following to be able to say, to be out and out transparent, that hang on a minute, this is how this investment policy works. This is how this insurance policy works. This is the charges. This is how much money they're making. This is what they're doing. This is how it's sold. And then suddenly, because you're opening all these questions up and you're being transparent, people are no longer going to get scammed.
Yes.
Or that a lot less people are going to get scammed. Or let's not call it scam, right? A lot less people are going to
not misinformed.
be not misinformed and then feel the pain later in life because they feel that they're going to get something when they don't, right? So we're on the cusp of this opportunity where developing economies like the Philippines have an opportunity to catch up because the combination of social media and financial technology. Because I have this knowledge of financial services, and obviously I've gained a reasonably large following for doing it. I love that. I love the fact that I can have an impact on so many people's lives. Whereas I think prior to social media, if your main focus was to go out and help people, your main focus was to go out and and do good for people, could you really have a humongous impact? Well, it was argument to say actually no, the people with the money, like the big corporations, the ones that are making the most amount of money off us, they're the ones that could have the impact because they had the ability to market themselves, not the guy that just wants to help people. Well, now the guy that has the knowledge that wants to help people can market themselves for free or close to next to nothing, right?
Because of
social media. That has the ability to change the entire financial system. Because I know that out there right now, there's so many financial advisors in Dubai that are selling products which just simply shouldn't be sold anymore. So for me, I'm like, well, excuse my French, but that's BS, absolute BS. So clearly, all that they're interested in is making money for themselves and not who they should be focusing on, which is the client. Now, for me, it's about client first. So if I've got a platform to be able to educate people and improve financial services through that, whether that be Filipinos or any nationality for that mind, then I'm going to do it. So you've got exactly that same platform where you can be able to improve that gap between financial literacy of people in one country. Like you're saying, there's only 25% of Filipinos that are financially literate in comparison to 65%. Okay, what are you going to do? Can the government make that much of an impact by bringing in pension schemes? Yes, but it's going to take a long time. You actually can have a bigger impact by using your influence through social media, by being transparent, by educating. People are far more going to be interested in watching a video where they, that in 2 minutes where they get explained how financial products work and how they can improve their literacy than previous old methods where they just ignored it.
Yeah, and because like what you said, even if there's access to financial planners in the UK, 9 out of 10 are not actively engaged with financial planners. And I think if more financial planners who have the clear and clean intent to help the client, are available on social media, then probably it will change. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are putting up content like this, so that you and my country would have a better understanding of what financial literacy is, about what financial products are suited for them personally, and not because it was because of that product was referred to or was suggested by a friend. Because not all products are the same, and not all products should be used by everyone.
The biggest thing is, and guess what? The friend didn't even know what he was selling. The friend doesn't even know what he has. The friend doesn't even know how it works. It's just like, oh yeah, let's get a life insurance. What? Well, okay, tell me about how it works. Tell me about
I want to have a conversation, bro. What do you in the UK? How do you perceive life insurance?
I I think
Is it a necessity or is it something that? Yeah.
I think it's reasonably common for people to get life insurance at certain points in their life, and because I think it's through the financial system, the banking system, it's sold to people on the basis, particularly if they've got families, and obviously if you have a mortgage on a property, then yeah, it's common. It's a lot more common. Yeah, it's a lot more common. The insurance penetration rate in the UK is a lot higher than what it is in the Philippines, for sure.
Yeah, true. Because I think for us, many Filipinos would think that it's just an expense that would just go down the drain since you're not going to use it. That's what many people are thinking. But definitely, those who had insurance policies in place had gained so much benefit out of that. So it only means that it clearly shows that in the UK, having a financial or having a life insurance is something that you should really have. Now, talking about this financial support, or sorry, not financial support, but family support. A while ago, you mentioned that you don't send money back home, and there's not much pressure from your family if you don't do that. Is it right?
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever.
Okay.
Because in all honesty, everyone financially looks after themselves. There's a lot more accountability on yourself than in comparison to the Philippines. But that's a combination of the country and the stability of the country and culture.
And the culture.
Yeah, I think if you look at it from if someone doesn't have a job in the UK, they go and sign a document to say what we call sign on the dole, and they'll get paid 10,000 pesos a week. That doesn't happen in the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
So that's the where people need support from the outside. In comparison to what in the UK, there's always a way that someone, if they get out of bed to sort things out, then they'll get something which it's more than enough to survive. They shouldn't. They should know. There's like, for example, being homeless in the UK shouldn't exist. There are still people that are due to what they do in life, but actually, people in the UK, they're spoon fed. Everything's given to them in some context. So it is like there's absolutely there's nothing that you can deny. Everyone has an opportunity. I think you'll realize this in life is there's always going to be people that take advantage of situations if they can. There's always going to be lazy people out there. There's always going to be driven people out there.
Yeah.
We're just, at the end of the day, it's not about what nationality is. We're just all human beings. We're all the same. There's no difference. It's just there's different societies have different things going on, and that slightly changes things in regards to that.
There will always be people who have different intentions in life, and it doesn't mean about any nationality. Now, talking about similarities here, brother, what do you think would be the similarities between the Brits and the Filipinos in terms of personal finance?
We still both spend. I think actually what you got to understand with Filipino and British culture, it's more similar than you think. Yeah. Because it's both a consuming westernized culture. So where we have access to overeating, overspending, malls, all these kind of things. So the Philippines is a westernized spending culture, just the same as the UK is. So I think that's where you'll find similarities.
And when there's overspending, then definitely what's next to it?
Debt.
Exactly, there's debt. Now, what's the similarity between... I think that's one common thing about Filipinos and Brits. It's debt. You know what? I was reading an article last night that many Brits are financially literate, but debt dependent. And I come to think that how come financially literate countries can be also in debt? So what do you think what's the cause of that?
The whole financial system relies on debt. That's what stimulates the economy. Debt stimulates the economy. Here's a really crazy statistic for you. If you've got $10, right, 35 dirhams in your pocket in in the Philippines, that times 14, right? So about 500 pesos. You got 500 pesos in your pocket right now, and you don't have any form of debt. You are richer than 50% of the entire American population.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
And
So it's about the whole consumption society, isn't it? So there's more money being circulated in like the UK, the US, for example. But people are reliant on debt. People are given credit to spend, stimulate the economy, to get the economy moving. Whereas I think it's more forced upon you in the Philippines.
yeah, but I think there's a difference between why you go into debt. I think for Filipinos, we go into debt because we help our families back home. Number one, I think that's gotta be the main thing, and second is because of health problems. Many Filipinos go into debt because they don't have any insurance in place. It's either inadequate or they totally don't have any insurance at all. And you know how much medical costs are, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why me personally, my family and I were in debt because my father got seriously ill 5 years ago, and because of that, it led to a huge amount of debt that we had to tackle for the next 3 to 4 years. But in the UK, what is the main thing, or what do you think is the main thing why people go into debt? Is it because they borrow money for a business, or they invest this, or what?
Greed.
Seriously.
Greed. That's reality. It's a lack of education and greed. It's like you it's like anything. It's like anything, right? If you're a baby and you put a toy in front of it, is the baby going to play with the toy, or is it just going to ignore it? It's just like it's just like you're just dangling. If you're hungry, if you haven't eaten in 5 days and you put food in, and there's a big plate of food put in front of you, do you eat it? Right? Is a bigger one. If you've just eaten and you're at a buffet and you're already full up, but the food's in front of you, do you still carry on eating sometimes?
Yes, because there's food there.
Exactly. Because there's food there. It's just greed. It's just which leads to human nature, right? And that's why it's such a problem in the UAE, right? There's so much cool stuff here, right? And you're given a credit card, which a lot of people have to rely on. I relied on it when I first got here. I happily admit that, and I still pay the consequences for it, right? But if something's dangled in front of you and you've got the ability to do it, and you're not necessarily that financially literate, or you kind of think, you rather enjoy life for the now than the later, which, let's be honest, we all do. We all want to enjoy life right now, right? It takes a strong head and experience to say, actually, I need to think about later rather than now. And I think particularly when we're younger, the majority of us just think about the now rather than the later, right? And that's all it is. And that's what, and the combination here in the UAE of giving credit at high interest rates with lack of financial literacy and a consumption society is literally it's like what are these little Russian like the bombs. It's like a bomb, isn't it? It's just like a explosion once you throw it. It's like a grenade. It's a ticking time bomb, right? So it's one of those cocktails. It's a cocktail for serious problems, and that's just the reality of society. But people know this, right? The banks know this. Financial institutions know this. The people at the top of these institutions know people's behavior. They have the data on people's behavior, and therefore they're going to take advantage of that. But what you're going to find, I believe, is the combination of social media, technology, where the combination of social media and technology means people can have access to true information and understanding, and we're living in an information age, right? And technology making things far more economical. The capitalist society that we live in, which has actually put people into more and more debt, is actually going to become a more social one. That's my thought process over the next 15 years. There you go. There's my 2 cents now. We'll find out if I'm wrong, but we'll see.
At least want to
Maybe
try
less
it.
than 15 years.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we really need to make a difference here, and money plays a very important role in the life of every expat living here in the UAE. Now,
Yeah.
that's about it, and I'll just have. I mean, we can talk about this topic for the next entire week or so, and we'll never run out of ideas about the subject.
I can talk. I can talk for Britain. If they wanted to bring in out of the 60 million people in the UK, they could bring me in to talk. That's for certain. We can go on forever.
True. Now I'll just share my takeaway for today. It's a segment that I've included in my program, and what I learned from you, Nathan, is that in the UK, you specifically told me that it's not only about the culture, but it's also about the maturity of the economy of the entire nation. That's what's giving you that head start, or that's what's giving you the advantage over other countries, and that is why you guys are in the rank of the rating is 65 and Philippines is 25 in terms of financial literacy now. And I just observed that there are also some similarities in terms of how we spend money. Like when you were in your 20s, you spend money on booze just like me, and as we grew older, I think it's part of being a matured individual that you try to invest your money in more meaningful things. So it's not much of a difference. And also, like what you mentioned, is that family pressure is not that much because, again, government support is there. And like what we discussed about the pension scheme, I also agree with you that it has to be mandatory. So if you are watching this right now, and I really hope that there's something that we learned out of what Nathan has shared with us, because I'm sure the Philippines is going to get to that certain level. And that's my dream for the Philippines, by the way, Nate. And I want the Philippines to be at the same level, if not higher, as the UK right now. And there's a long way to go, especially in the financial planning services. Like what you said, many are out there just to sell products and not really care for the client. And I can rant about that today, but probably I'll save for it in the next coming episodes, because I just had an experience between two clients who came to me telling me that they were sold of a product from the Philippines, and you know for a fact that it is not legal to sell products from the Philippines to the UAE. So I had that experience this past days. And yep. So that's one. Now, Nate, how can we reach you? And where are you right now? You're in a coffee shop, but where and how can our audience reach you?
So if you've got any form of, we've do financial planning, just similar to Kuya J does. But the main thing that we focus on at this stage is helping people with debt. So if you've got any kind of problems with credit cards, loans, you don't know what to do, maybe you've lost your job or you can't keep up with payments, you're worried, you might be considering going back to the Philippines but don't know what's going to happen in regards to those things, visit helpwithdebt.ae, and you can drop us a message there, create an account, or if you want to go to my Instagram page or my TikTok, it's at NatesDXB. My TikTok has loads of different videos on, and the majority of them on debt, so we can help you there as well. But drop us a line, and one of the team can help you, hopefully, if you've got any issues with debt.
Yep. It's all about the proper usage of TikTok. Okay. It's all about providing your TikTok page is outrageous, brother. You go viral on TikTok. I don't know how you do it, but kudos to you, man.
12 million views now.
12 million views just for providing information about debt. And really do hope that, of course, we're gonna catch up after this, and we want to help more Filipinos, and not just Filipinos, but also expats with their finances here in the UAE. So that's about for this episode today. Thank you so much for those who are still watching this, and catch me and my next guest for next week. So it's gonna be a surprise as to who my next guest would be. And again, this is Kuya J, aka the Purpose Driven Advisor. See you on my next episode. Bye-bye!
Sending money back home is expensive, slow, and time-consuming. Not anymore. Introducing Denari Cash. Denari Cash solves this in a simple way. Denari Cash don't send money across border. Yes, you heard it right. So, you want to know how do we send money internationally without sending across the border? Simple. You make a local payment to Denari Cash, and Denari Cash makes a local payment to your recipient. That's right, it's local in then local out. From any account to any cash pickup and major bank account. That's the reason why Denari Cash makes money transfers so much cheaper and faster. Available on any mobile, tablet, and computer. Denari Cash is trusted and loved by tens of thousands of people just like you. So what are you waiting for? Sign up now and start saving now with Denari Cash.